we have the completion calendar here. So we have the formula here. I'll just go through the formula first. Now I'll just create another formula to explain how to create this formula. So let's just start with the preview of the formula. So initially, the logic of this thing, how you can create a calendar here is, so what this does is, so there is some blocks, and then there is completed days are marked in bold, and then days in which the habit is completed is marked in green. So the logic here is, first we'll be finding the total number of days in the current month, and we'll be using the repeat formula to create the placeholders for each of these days. And using those placeholders, we'll be creating some, we'll be using the index of that current, using the map function. We'll be using the index of the current block or the current day to create the days on the block, and then we'll use that. And after that, we'll be updating each of these days, updating the color of each of these days based on the completion on that day, or whether it is greater than the day or not. And then finally, we will join the entire list of blocks into a single text string using the join function. So that is the entire logic of this formula. So now let's just build that. So first I'll be adding a formula property here. So let's just call this type. Let's just start. So first thing what we want is, let's just define a let's function. So inside the let's function, first, as I told you, we need to know the number of days, the total number of days in the current month. So for that, we'll be using, let's just define that, days in current month. So when you take any 2 days, like if you take today's date and then we take the same date in the next month, if you find the number of days between these 2 dates, we'll get the total number of days in the current month. So we'll use that as the thing, we'll use that logic to get the number of days here. To do that, we'll be finding the date between formula, and we'll take the next month's dates. We'll take the today and dot dateAdd. We want to add 1 month to it to find the next month's date, and then just call it today. We want to find the days between these 2 days, and if we see the result, it's going to give us 31. So this is, currently we are in the month of, at least when I'm recording this video, so currently it is October, so we have 31 days in October month, so it's showing 31 as correctly. Now what we want is, we want to take this 31 days and we have to create a placeholder for we need to create 31 placeholders for each of the day of the month. So to do that, let's just create a placeholder. Let's just call that days. So to do that, we'll be using the repeat formula. So repeat. So you can use any text string. So I'll be using a semicolon in this place. And you need to specify the number of times you want to repeat the placeholder. In this case, it's going to be days in the current month. So this will give us a text string. So if you see here, as of now, if we just look into the days placeholder, it is a string of 31 semicolons or 31 placeholder strings. So we want a list of these placeholders. So for that, we'll be using the split formula. So let's just use the split formula. So this is, let's use empty strings. So it just splits each of these semicolons into a list. So if you just look at this, it's going to be a semicolon in each of these lists. So, and the type of this is text, and it just goes on. So it's a list of semicolons or placeholders. So let's, now what we want is, for each of these placeholders, we want the day to be shown. So let's just do that. So days list. And how we can do that is, we can take the days placeholders, and we're going to use the map function .map, and we can use the index +1. And if we look at the days list, now it is a list of numbers. So if you just enter, you can just see a list of numbers like from 1 to 31. Now we want to format this into a neat code block, something like this. So for that, we'll be using the style function. So we just don't want the index +1, we are going to use the style function for that. So yeah, so let's just style that. Let's just go that in bracket. So that we get a text string number. That style. We're going to use code so that it's neat, and then use the blue thing. This is going to give us a nice list of blocks for each of these days. So next thing what you have to do is we want to not only show you don't want this commas here. So to take away that commas, what we're going to do is we're going to call it as .join to make this into a single string using the space, which gives us this calendar here. So now this is the calendar that we have here. So this is nice. So what happens here is the first row is not having proper alignment. There is only single digit, and in other rows we are having double digit. So we are having this misalignment between the rows. So to do that, we are going to create we need an additional 0 before the first digit. So what we're going to do is we are going to after we do format, what we're going to do is we're going to pad the start. So pad start, we have a formula for that. So it's going to be, we need the total number of digits to be 2. So just give 2, and we want 0 to be the padded number. We'll add that as a text string so that we get an additional 0 before every single digit number. So now if you see, it's a bit more neat and straightforward. So this is a simple calendar. Now what we need is we want this calendar to be more responsive to when we add an entry. We want that specific day to become a green, or and the completed days to become bold and everything. So we'll just do that. So this is the most simplest formula for us to get the calendar. So next step for us is we have to create the colored days list. So just call colored list. So in this, what we're going to do is we're going to take the days list, and we're going to use the map function. And this is the main logic here. So we'll define another let's inside this so that we can access variables more efficiently, or we can access the variables much more specifically using the let's function. So we're going to call the current day as the current block, or just as current, and you can change this to be coloredDaysList.join. Okay, now we have the date here. Now what we want is we want to also get the date. So date is going to be current.toNumber. As we know, the current is the formatted text string, so the text string has the date in it. So you want the two numbers that we can actually use this to compare the entries in the block database. So let's just do that. So after we have done this, what we want is we want to define an ifs. Inside an ifs, what we're going to do is we're going to have a logic here. So first thing is we want to take the entries or the logs of each of these of the habits. We're going to take the entries, and the entries database needs to have a proper date formula. So date when it was completed. So we'll just use that. So entries. So we need to filter the entries for any of the current dates thing. So we'll use filter and current dot date. So this will give us the current. This will give the date for each of the entries in the entries property or the entries relation. So inside that we want date is a date property, so we can access the date function here. So it'll give us the date from 1 to 31, so which is the current date, and if that is equal to the current date, then what we want to do is, so we are filtering the entries so that the remaining entries inside this is only the entries which has the date as the current day in that block. So you get that. So if this list is empty, which means that this habit was not done on that day. So we don't want that, so it will be empty.not, so that if it is not empty, which means you have completed this habit on that day, what we want is we want to take the day and we want to style it differently. So let's use the style function, and since the code and everything is already there, we'll be taking bold and we want it to be green in color, and so we're going to get this, and yeah, so this is how it is. Current.date. Okay. So next thing that we need is we need to check if the day is already passed, that is if the date is say 16th or earlier. So we want that days to be marked as in bold, and if it is not completed, it needs to be marked in orange. So for that we're going to do that thing. So let's again use the entry start filter. Start filter. When I'm going to filter entry system, we're just going to check if the current date, that is today's date, is greater than place.date is greater than the date, or instead we can just be like, if the date is less than today.date. So this means that it is not completed and the date is less than today. We want the style to be style needs to be in bold and orange. And if it is not either of these case, that means it is in the future, like it is the remaining number of days. So you want to just return the entire day like that, and you don't want anything else for this thing to do. So yeah, so let's continue with that. And at this point, this should be working. So there is some typo here. Just check what it is. There is some missing bracket somewhere. So just go check what it is. Let's just try renaming this in dateValue. So let's just call it. So just try renaming the value. So things seem to be good. Yeah, so we are missing a comma here, so that's the reason it's not coming. Yeah, okay, now it has come properly. So just undo the earlier changes. Literally can just be like that. Okay, so these are the changes we need. So we're just missing a comma here because we need to separate this variable declaration and the final sentence here. So yeah, so this is how it is. So at this point you can see the current days in which is completed is green, and the days before that is orange and it is in bold, and all the remaining days are just the normal formatting which you have here. So that is the formula, so that we can get a formula like this here. So this is the formula here. I'll just put this in the description. If you can just take that from there. So the most simplest formula you can have. The other thing is, now we want to wrap this entire thing so that how much ever you do, it just shows the number of days only. As of now, it's just doing something like this, just expanding according to the width of the column. So instead of that, what we can do for that is we have to use something called this logic here inside placeholders. So this should be something like, you need to use days in a row, that max number of days that we want, and all these things. So I'll just put this formula here. You can try to understand how that can work. You can just try to read this formula, or you can just copy paste this formula that you have in your database and just change the property names and just put that in the description so that it works with this wrapping function also. So as of now, this calendar function formula works fine. So we have these, it just takes the current completion and then it just works. So if I add an entry and let's try changing the date. So this is 13th is already completed there. So I'll just try to change it to 11th so that it's not completed on that day. I'll just try to change it to 11. And if we change 11, you can see that 11 is it's changing automatically. For completed days, it will be shown in bold, and if it's completed, if the habit is completed on that day, it will show in green. Otherwise, it will show in orange. So that is how it is. So this is how we can create a calendar style UI inside a Notion formulas.